Welcome to episode 6 of Web Developers Working Week. My name's Peter Fisher. I'm a freelance web and mobile applications developer. This is a weekly show where I talk about what I've been getting up to as a freelancer. So this week has been, again, extremely busy week doing various different things, both on the front end and on the back end. Now, one thing I did mention last week is that I was building a website off of the back of some designs that were given to me by a graphics designer. And I'm still doing this, and this is an iterative process, so it's gone through several designs, right? And in this sort of iteration, what I'm able to do, which is fantastic, is I'm able to remove some of the old CSS, some of the old JavaScript that was in the iterations beforehand, which is nice because it makes you be able to create the code in a nicer, cleaner, tighter kind of way, because you're removing stuff. Removing stuff is great because you're simplifying things down. I'm also using Sass, which allows me to create CSS variables for things like colors, things like widths, and things like background bits and pieces and stuff, and then I can change those variables and it will sort of trickle down in the cascadey style sheet kind of manner, which is fantastic because it basically means that I can take a design, change the variables. The design layout is the same, but the colors are different, which means that I can offer different colors to the client based on the same layout that I've got, which is great. So, a challenge that I've had with the CSS stuff is background positioning. So I'm using image sprites. So an image sprite, if you don't know, is a way of creating, or you create basically an image, a single image that has lots of like little individual images on there. And they all are positioned in a way that has a series of pixels between each other, so you have a margin between each icon. You can then use CSS background positioning to target a specific icon in that image pack. So think of it like an icon pack, if you will. So I've been doing that, and it basically means that you are able to reduce the amount of overhead, the amount of HTTP requests to get the image from the server, because you're only getting one image, and you might have, say, 10, 20, 30 icons, right? But it's only one single image, so you only have to retrieve that once. Then you use CSS to change which icon you're after based on the position of that icon in that icon pack. Now, the challenge that I've got, or I've had, which I've overcome, is the thing where the actual image sprite itself is too big for the icons. And so I've been using background size as a means of getting around that, to scale the overall image sprite down to the relevant sizes that are required for the image sprites, for the icons. Now, this is something that you just simply couldn't do back in the day, right? This is something that you couldn't do, say, 10, 12 years ago when I was building websites in basic HTML using tables. And it's so nice to see the progression of the web, see the progression of CSS, see where we are at the moment. Before, back in the day, what we were doing is we were creating individual images for each of these icons. We were also making individual images for things like corners that have curved corners and all of this crazy stuff we were doing. But now we can do so much more in CSS. It's fantastic. Another challenge I had was that these icons, some of them at least, are in circular form, right? So, and these are actual clickable buttons. So I had to create a circular button, something, again, you just simply couldn't do unless you actually created lots of images and tables and sort of, embedded nested tables for all of that stuff back in the day, back in HTML, 4 days? So yeah, it's fantastic to see that growth. Now, I certainly appreciate that if you glance at my channel, you'll be like, hang on a minute, you're a back-end developer. You talk about Docker, you talk about Linux, you talk about Python, you talk about PHP. You're now talking about CSS. Well, hang on. Why are you talking about CSS and JavaScript when you're a back-end developer? Well, I'm kind of a bit of both. I kind of like both sides, both the front end and the back end. I was actually in my degree when I was at university, I was doing a lot of multimedia stuff. We were doing a lot of game design, a lot of 3D animation, a lot of Flash as well, and a lot of Photoshop. So I've come from a sort of a graphic background, and it is so nice to do both back end and front end. Not only are you more, I would like to think, well-rounded as a developer because you appreciate both the back end and the front end processes, but it's also quite refreshing when you tackle a back end piece of code for like a long time. Right, and then you just go and do some CSS. You do something that is, I'm not saying backend is not as creative as front end, but it's more, it does feel like there's a different creative dimension when you are doing CSS and JavaScript. And also the feedback when you're doing that is quicker, I think, than perhaps the backend stuff, because you simply have to refresh the page and you've got feedback as to how good the thing is looking. Whereas with the backend, perhaps you have to run scripts, you have to go through series of processes, you have to perhaps grab things from the database down and all of this stuff. With the CSS and the JavaScript, you simply just refresh the page, bish bosh bang, there it is. That is your change. And of course, with the when you're manipulating the DOM, the document object model, on the fly, you can use the web development toolbar to do that as well, which is fantastic. This week, I've also been doing some work for a client of mine over in Texas, and I've been doing work for clients internationally for a while now. I've done work for Chicago, I've done work for a client in San Francisco, done some work for a client in Belgium and the Netherlands, and so on and so forth. But working for clients internationally is great. There is, however, a challenge with the time zones, of course, because I'm in England, I'm in the UK, I'm based in Gloucestershire in the UK, and with people in different countries, say there was one I was talking to in India not so long ago, they are obviously in a different time zone, so you have to kind of work around that, work with them as well, try and get it on their time zone. That's what I like to try and do. It often works out that I'm doing work when they're asleep, which is fantastic, or we are having meetings after I've had my dinner, which means that yes, my days are, they're long anyway, right? They're long anyway, but it does mean that the days become longer, and so you have to plan these things ahead of time. Which is fine, which is perfectly fine, and it's been working quite well. And it's interesting to hear the requirements and the challenges of different companies in different parts of the world, because it gives you kind of like a insight as to what is going on with the programming sense in those different countries, which is great. As you've probably noticed throughout these videos, my desk here is getting more and more untidy, and I've got lots and lots of stuff that I have to, whoa, here we go, lots of stuff. Can you see paperwork and everything? All of this stuff on the board, that is all being removed soon because we are moving premises, and we have now been given sort of like, not the green light, but we've been given some sort of more encouragement that things are moving in the right way. So perhaps one day I will be talking about the move in far more detail, but there is an awful lot of stuff. If I went downstairs, which I won't do here, if I went downstairs, you will just see boxes upon boxes of stuff, and I don't know if you can see, where is it? One, is it down there? No, it's not, it's the other side. Other side of me, we have a Dynamo label maker. If you can see, it's probably, yeah, just sort of hiding behind my drink there. So that Dynamo label maker has been used and abused to just sort of like put labels on all of the boxes and stuff. So yeah, expect this office to be slimming down as the days go on or the weeks go on. But yeah, interesting times ahead. I've also been doing a lot more stuff with the Packed course that I'm doing. I'm actually going to be publishing that to a GitHub repository very, very soon. I'm going to be talking about that course in more depth closer to the time. It might not be this side of the move, however. And also, I've been doing a lot of stuff for the talk that I'm doing at PHP South West in August. Again, it's all sort of happening at once. So I've been coming up with some keynote bits and pieces about how, using the app keynote, how I'm going to actually structure that talk, coming up with the slides. I have in my head a reasonable idea of what I want to talk about. And I actually did an abstract video of that. It's all about software complexities. I'll leave a link in the doobly-doo cardy card thing up here and in the description box below on that. If you want to check that out, if you want to come and see me, that'd be fantastic. Come and say hello. That'd be great. I've also done an IGTV episode fairly recently, and this is the Coder Questions. IGTV, if you don't know, is Instagram TV. If you don't follow me on Instagram, why aren't you following me on Instagram? It's at How to Code Well. Do check that out, and I do have IGTV episodes. I've done a numerous amount of those already, where I'm actually answering specific coding related questions, and this one was on Docker dangling images. What I did is I took a photo of my screen as I was pruning down Docker images, as I was basically removing the dangling images on my system. And I had something like, I don't know, over a gig's worth of stuff, file free space from doing so. So I highly recommend you do that if you are using Docker. However, I was asked on Instagram, what on earth is a dangling Docker image? And therefore I did an IGTV episode where I was talking specifically about that. What are Docker dangling images? So if you don't follow me on Instagram, if you don't follow me on Twitter, then please do so. It's just at How to Code Well. Hey Google, turn on Office Light. So I best go ahead and get on with some work. I've got a lot of stuff that I need to do this week, and also some wash-up stuff that I should have done last week. I needed to do some more API unit tests and other bits and pieces because I don't like leaving code that is untested for too long, because it just suddenly becomes part of the system. So thanks ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everyone, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.